Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Corey Congilio, and I want to talk about another one of my favorite things today, dominant 7 chords and how to make the most out of them when you're playing blues rhythm. Let's check it out. We're going to talk about how to deconstruct the dominant 7 chord like I like to when I'm playing blues rhythm. Coming up is a full lesson on how to actually deconstruct the typical dominant 7 chord and use pieces of it to really make the most of them and to have a lot of fun with them when you're playing blues rhythm or playing any kind of funky rhythm. Use them in your solos, lots to come. I got so many other videos on this channel, gear reviews, lots of lessons, more to come. So please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you know when I'm putting new content out. Click the links below for my website. You'll see lots of information on all of the guitar courses that I put out. And if you dig what I'm doing here and you want to see some more lessons on things you're having some trouble with, tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. It really helps when putting these videos together. All right, I think you get the picture. Let's jump in and deconstruct some dominant 7 chords. All right, so let's dive into some of these A7 shapes that I was playing. Now, the first thing I want you to think about is that these aren't really a bunch of A7 chords. I like to think of one big sort of looming A7 chord and how we can rip that apart. That's why we're deconstructing the dominant 7 here. We're in the key of A. This is a classic 12-bar blues shuffle. Our chords are A7, D7, and E7. And let's start with a chord I didn't play to kind of see where we're going and see where my brain really ultimately leads us, you know, and how we're going to use it for these other chords as well, okay? And I even throw in a couple other things for kind of good measure, but this is a good way to kind of get you started to see not only how I can use new chords, but also maybe use them in a soloing or an improvising fashion as well. Okay, so here is the first shape. Now, disclaimer, I never play that chord. I use that chord for teaching primarily. Why? Because it really spells out all of the notes in a dominant 7 chord quite well. We start here with our 6 string, first finger on the 5th fret there. And that's our A, that's our root. We skip the 5th string and go right to the 4th string. And that's going to be the G note. Now, a G note is what's called the flat 7 in an A7 chord, and it kind of gives you that bluesy, off-kilter kind of tough sound, right? Anytime you play an A and a G against each other, it's going to sound that way, you know? It's a great sound. It's what all blues is really based on, in my opinion. So we go A, G, then we go to the 3rd string, and our pinky is going to play that C sharp note there on the 3rd string. Now, what's important about that is the C sharp is the major 3rd. The C sharp really denotes whether this is a minor or a major chord. Now, all dominant chords have a major 3rd in them, okay? And it really sort of gives you could play the 3rd and the 7th together, no root note, and it definitely sounds like a chord. Especially if you got a bass player going. More on that later when we get to that. As we continue up the strings, our 3rd finger there is on the 2nd string, 5th fret, and that is our 5th. That's our E. And the 5th degree of the dominant chord is often considered the most altered. You can have an A7 sharp 5, an A7 flat 5. That note can be moved up. You can see how that fingering stays very similar for chords like 13s and stuff like that, okay? When we're playing 6ths, you see that note moved up and grabbed that F sharp there. A little bit different than a 7, but just to show you that out of this shape, you can start to see how other chords are born. Even though that fingering's different, the notes are still the same. Okay, I don't want to get in the weeds there, but that's the shape that's really going to help us figure out what an A7 is and where it comes from. Then what I like to do is to take that little thing apart, and I like to play this shape. So imagine you're playing like a good old D chord here. Move all your fingers up one set of strings, or technically, say up in direction. You could say down in pitch, or however you want to think about it. But it's going to be on strings 4, 3, and 2. Your notes are going to be G, C sharp, and E, because remember, it's basically those right there now. But it's a lot more comfortable to kind of play them like that, because now you have a little stronger grasp on them. Okay? Maybe you're playing a... So another thing I like to do is to remove even another note and go back to what I talked about before, where you just had the 3rd and the 7th, okay? What's really cool now is we're stretching the chord apart, and let's say we're playing with a keyboard player and a bass player. The bass player's maybe the organist is playing some full chords, and you can now go and play that little move right there. So don't get too hung up on the half step away approach and that sort of thing. More on that at some other time. But it's important to know that from that shape, I can rip it apart and use pieces, and it's still an A7. Okay, if you can see that, you're going to be able to put this in a lot of other keys, in every key, frankly, and really make some fun moves, okay? Another thing you're going to be able to do is take your classic sort of bar chord here. That's a lot of chord there. And there's really not, unless you're in a trio, you don't really need to play that chord a whole lot. I mean, you listen to players like Robben Ford or folks like that who play very sparse rhythmic ideas, and it still sounds full. They don't always need to go, you know, but there's nothing wrong with, still sounds really good. But this sounds cool too. Mix it with this. But now we have that. And I want to utilize that because I like this pinky note here. And this pinky note is the G. Remember, the G against an A has a really great sound. So we're going to take part of that. To me, what that looks like is an E7 open chord, but with different fingers. You know, you can also play an E7 open chord right here too. So if I were to take that logic and I were to move it all the way up here, and I had another finger that was available to go there, I'd have a big old bar chord that looked like that. So if we take that fingering, it's kind of like a deconstructed bar chord. No bar behind it. So what you're telling me is that I don't have to play bar chords anymore? That's what I'm telling you. You can get away from that. The sooner the better in a lot of ways, because unless you're just kind of playing by yourself and you want that big full sound, you don't need it. I rarely play them anymore. It was a rite of passage to learn bar chords, and it really helps when you're strengthening your hand to kind of be able to do more difficult things in the future. I always say bar chords are the most physically taxing thing you're ever going to play on the guitar. So once you really sort of get an idea of how this chord works, it's going to be tough to kind of see roots when they're not on the 6th string. So you want to know that this note right here is the A, so that's your root note there. The E stacks on top of it. Look, there's that same C sharp we had before. Now we get a higher G to get that sound. And if we wrap our hand around, we have some nice muting going on from our first finger and our thumb. So if we want to get really funky, maybe this, maybe this. So we have all of those options now available to us. Maybe we want to bring it up here to D position. There's our D7, Here's that D7 here in that shape we learned earlier for A. Same idea. Same thing for E. They all sound really good together. So what you'll notice is as I played through that first example, I had a lot of that kind of stuff. You can start to really move those around. When you go to the D7, try it this way. And then you'll also see me kind of incorporate an A9, or that shape, and I'll use it in D as well. So I'm going to assume that a lot of you probably know that chord if you've ever done any kind of Stormy Monday. Stuff like that. You can add that to a groove like what I was doing and have a lot of cool sort of almost melodic chord movements going on. So I think that's a really good way to kind of start broadening your horizons as a blues rhythm player. I've taught this stuff a bunch. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it in some of my courses. But I always find like there's a new way to kind of keep sort of chipping away at ideas so that people of all ability levels and styles can get something out of it. Because you could play that over just one chord, like a one-chord funk vamp. You could play it in different keys. You could do all kinds of different stuff. If you just wanted to play in one key, you could monkey around with those for as long as you like and have some really fun stuff going on. We could try putting some single lines against some of these movements too and have some fun with our solos or just creating cool riffs too. So if I just played the A7, we might do something like this. 2, 3, 4. Hey, thanks a lot for watching this lesson. I really love playing this way. I love comping rhythm all night long, sometimes more than even playing solos. Maybe not. But it's really, really fun, especially when you get with a really cooking band or another great player that you can bounce these ideas off of. Check the link below and you'll get the tab for these chord shapes, and hopefully you can start putting them into your playing right away. All right, everybody, Corey Congilio here. I'll see you on another lesson.